This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 10. I'm your host, Steve, at Fantasy Ladder. This podcast is brought to you by the IDP Guys Podcast Network from idpguys.org. So, welcome back, my fantasy football friends and family. Let's climb the ladder of fantasy football together. So today we are going to be continuing the fan base series. Back from a brief break, but welcome back. We're going to bring you again just some of my favorites from the fantasy football community to talk about their favorite teams. We are doing this, of course, to add a little bit more depth and heart to the discussion, since I may not be as plugged into the team or understand the history of each team as I do with my own favorite team. So today we are covering the Los Angeles Chargers, and we're going to be covering it with an awesome guest who I'm going to bring on right now. Here he is. We got Tim Lazenby at NFL Lazenby. He is a writer for DynastyProsFootball.com. Tim, how you doing? And how long have you been a Chargers fan?
Doing great. I find I'm probably a rarity on this guest series. I'm only recently a Chargers fan. About last two seasons, I was a
Okay.
Steelers fan since '95. But growing up in Canada, I'm kind of right around Toronto area.
Oh,
Um,
perfect. Okay.
we don't really have a home team, so a lot of guys will cheer for Buffalo or Detroit. They're close teams. But since we don't have a home team, I had a best friend, Steve, in grade 5. He was wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers shirt that his father gave him. So that was my favorite team. That was the whole reason for that. So it was about a couple of years ago. I said, you know what? I think I should choose a team for my own reasons, and because I'm all about fantasy. Honestly, Austin Eckler and Justin Herbert really just that was it. So now I'm all in after all these years, and I'm not turning back.
I love that. Yeah, so it's very interesting. Sometimes like the NFL teams can be very territorial. At least some major sports cities can be very territorial about like what teams to
Yeah,
root for. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia. If
yeah,
you're from there and you're not an Eagles fan, you kind of get like shunned from the family a little bit. Now, I mean, you get a lot of Steelers fans in that area too, just because it's still Pennsylvania.
yeah,
I guess it can be more of like a northeast part of the country thing, like
yeah,
Boston. People from Boston, they are hardcore Boston fans. People from New York, I mean, they have their pick of like the
yeah,
many New York teams that are accounted for across the sports. But being from Canada, that's very interesting.
yeah,
So, but the connection with your friend, that's really neat. But again, if the focus is on fantasy, I
yeah,
mean, the Chargers, they were very good and have been very good to the fantasy world for quite a while,
yeah,
especially last season, which we'll get into in just a
yeah.
bit. But that's really cool. I appreciate you being on the show, and very excited to dig into the Chargers because again, very exciting team. So I just want to welcome you once again. So before we get into this upcoming season, just wanted to summarize the 2021 season, right? So Chargers had a new head coach, Brandon Staley. He led them to a winning season with a record of 9-8. Now they just missed the playoffs. And this is now the third straight season in that situation, but they just missed it coming down to the wire of that ridiculously close and
Yeah.
highly entertaining Week 18 game against the Raiders. So overtime, division rival, absolutely brutal way to have the playoff
Yeah.
run be taken away. But for just sports and football fans in general, it was just like that might as well have been the Super Bowl. It was like
Yeah.
that good of a game. Just unfortunately, came up short there, and it just was the full length of overtime. Like it was really nuts. However, under the new head coach Staley, the Chargers did become, in my opinion, one of the easiest teams to root for, and became a big team that I had a desire to watch, especially as a second year rising star quarterback Justin Herbert
Yeah.
continued to produce. So Tim, obviously with that disappointing end to the 2021 season, what is your level of anticipation like heading into this season?
Okay. So I have to make something very transparent. Although I wear the hat and I cheer for them, I swear to you, I try my best to be unbiased. So,
Oh,
so whether it was, because I'm a new fan to this team, so whether it was last year or whether it was, the previous, 20 years with Steelers, I don't always call a Super Bowl, like a homer would. But it's hard not to come off as a homer with this team. Uh, I did a series of I did a series of articles actually just recently on our website, uh, which I normally stick it to fantasy football, but I couldn't help myself. So I basically said the schedule came out, and
oh
I
yeah.
took a look. I looked at every single team versus every single team, and I wrote down all their schedules. And I wrote down, week one, this team versus this team. Here's a win loss, and then I went on and every single team, every single game,
Oh wow.
and I took
Okay.
into account basically like they're how they are at home, how they're away, when their bye comes up, a lot of typical stuff, and then basically a gut reaction. And some of the results were shocking. Like I had to apologize to some New Orleans fans. I did them pretty dirty. But anyways, once it came out, I said, you know what? I'm going with it. I'm going to type it up. I'm going to go. And Chargers, I predict 13-4,
Okay.
which is pretty, like I say, homery. But I can't help it. I mean, I look at the team and all of the things on my wish list from when we got eliminated in week 18. I said we got to fix this and this and this. We pretty much got gift wrapped almost everything. So I'm looking at this team, and there's not too many holes. When you talk about where you fit in the echelon of the league itself, I mean, offense, we're right up there. Defense, right up there. I have a lot more faith in Staley than a lot of people because of his fourth quarter antics. Um, I mean, special teams are good enough. Linebacker is, I mean, it's not weak compared to the league, but I think that's the only spot that I'm like, I'd like to see a little. But other than that, I don't see anything other than if there's not an AFC Championship game, it's a disaster with all of the pieces you put in play, all the free agent signings and the trade for Mac, and our first round rookie who I got a huge man crush for. It's all sailing towards goodness. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I am curious, like what the like prop would be for like the Chargers to be like the AFC like champions, like to make a Super Bowl appearance, because I think it would be a good bet, because I do agree with you in that even though that division is like completely ramped up,
Unbelievable.
if there was a team to make a run like the Bengals did last year, I could very easily see that being the Chargers, where like they haven't been in the playoffs. Now all of a sudden they're kind of catching fire. I could absolutely see that happening. So I think 13-4. Um, I don't want to say it's too optimistic, because I think it is realistic, because they were only 9-8 the year before. I mean,
Yeah,
how many games are decided by a field goal? You know what I mean? So if it just goes the other way, I mean, I think that's definitely a possibility. Now, with it being an 18-week season, now I think any team winning 13 games is going to be pretty challenging, but I think it's absolutely possible. But that kind of goes to a talking point that I want to bring up in all these shows, because as fans we can be very optimistic or
yeah,
we could be very pessimistic. So it just depends like how bad your team has burned you in the past. Like maybe you
yeah,
just want to minimize your expectations and it's not so brutal if they disappoint you, right? But
yeah,
no, I mean, I think there is plenty of objective reason to think that they can have that success. Um, so you would say you're anticipating this season very much then.
yeah.
You're very excited.
Oh yeah,
Other than the standard, which is very excited. You know what I mean? At least for
yeah,
me. Um, but there are some seasons, like say with the Eagles, where I'm like, you know, I'm just kind of looking forward to like the next year or whatever.
yeah,
I was kind of in that mode last season, and then they really surprised
mhm,
with what they were able to do. So that was great. So now, because of that, I might have an unhealthy amount of excitement going into this year. But either way, yeah, I love that call. I think that's really cool.
I mean, if it
Um,
helps for you, Steve, I got the Eagles making the playoffs too.
Oh, perfect.
So
Okay.
good
Yeah,
news for both of us.
I like that. Yeah, I think the Cowboys still may be the top dog there. Now, did you give the Eagles the division or the like a wild card spot?
That division is kind of interesting. I mean,
It
if you're ever
is.
bored, you want to read the article. Some of those predictions, I even surprised myself. So, as a
Gotcha.
fan, you go in with like a gut reaction. So, I look at each division, I'm like, oh yeah, this team will take it. Oh, Dallas is so good, for example, in their division. Well, you know
Well,
what? When you break it down and you look at every game and whatever, sometimes it's surprising. So, my gut reaction, honestly, was to have the Eagles just outside of the playoffs, just outside.
gotcha.
Now, mind you, this was before the AJ Brown trade, mind you.
Oh,
Um,
sure, sure.
but even before that, after I took a look at their schedule and took a look at where the bye was and kind of their historical data as to who I do well against, who I don't do well against, etc., I got them making it. I think they're going to finish second in their division. It's going to come down to like a tiebreaker, and they'll come in the wild card.
Okay, very cool.
That's my
Yeah, so
Nostradamus.
I'll have to track down that article and I'll link that when I post the episode and stuff because I'm fascinated to take another look at that. That's great. So with Staley's first season, okay, as head coach for the Chargers, I think that could be described as a success overall.
Yeah.
What do you want to see different from him going into this season?
Uh, with Staley specifically, the number one Charger fan throwing garbage at the TV was just yelling, "Staley, kick the ball." He's more aggressive than any coach I've ever seen in any sport in that type of situation. And he's that new wave of coach where you're gonna follow analytics, which is
Yeah,
which is harder for the older guys with the salt in the beard. But you know what? You got to get with the times. And analytics are where it's at. I think. I think. I mean, it all started with Moneyball in baseball, right?
right.
Um, so I think he's on to something, and it's going to take a couple seasons for um, not only his own fan base and players to get on board with, but just to have that. Like there's a thing about Bill Belichick. No matter what team he has, he's never out because it's Belichick, right? He and I think given time, I'm not saying he's that level of Hall of Fame coach, but given that time, he's going to have. You know what? Staley's got it. Don't worry about it. He knows what he's doing. If we lose this game, he knows what he's doing, and I think that's coming in the next couple of years. But I still would like to see a little less coronaries for all us Charger fans. Kick the ball once in a while. Hopkins, he can kick. He can. I swear to God. So you got to let
Yeah.
him kick some. So I'd still like to see aggression, but I'd like to see. I'd like to see a little less. And the other thing with Staley, he's pretty obsessed with guys having to play every single position when it comes to
Mm,
defense. He doesn't want someone just to be a strong safety or a free safety. He wants you to be able to play all over the place. He wants you want to cover this, and so he's always keeping the other team guessing. And I'd like to see some more stability. I want to see some more. You know what? We're going to see this guy play primarily this, and he'll pitch in once in a while. Just because if a guy moves around too much, he gets out of rhythm. Now this is just a schmuck. I'm just an armchair GM. But as far as a fan, that's what I'd like to see. But again, above all else, I'm thrilled with Staley. Um, I have complete faith. So if we didn't make the playoffs, even though on paper we should have, I'm okay with it. We're going better places this year. For the rest of the team, um, the defense needs to improve vastly. Now with now with our trade of Mac and our acquisitions, I I don't see us less than a top five defense. That sounds a little. Again, I hate being a homer, but unbiasedly, I think that's realistic. So I mean, that's huge for me. And then the protection for Justin Herbert is like the other big holy trinity need for me, and they addressed that huge in the draft. Zion Johnson, I'll talk about him later. But
Yeah.
man, that was like my prayers answered from baby Jesus himself. Uh, just
Yeah.
just what we needed, man. So that's what I see, and I see they've improved all of it. So.
I love that answer. Yeah, I would agree that from what Staley showed, I would have the utmost confidence that he can do well with the team. Like, and it can be like a tough question to answer sometimes, right? Like for the Eagles, I somehow make this I make every episode about the Eagles, so I apologize.
As you
But
should, as you
with
should.
yeah, right. But like, with Sirianni, it took him a long time to get a real grasp of the offense and how to run it the best. And then eventually it was like clockwork and it was really good. Obviously, we became a playoff team there. But either way, what I want from him this year is to continue is to keep at it, but also try to get the most out of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Howie Roseman did his part, bringing in AJ Brown and some other talent. But now I want Sirianni to just get the most out of Jalen Hurts. And I think that is just the real key to the Eagles' success this year and also their future. But I
More
really
more
like,
passes to Gainwell, Steve. That's what they need.
I
More passes to Gainwell.
I would absolutely be thrilled with that. 100%. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we were talking about the additions they made and the draft. We'll get into that in just a moment. But it was a very busy offseason for the AFC West specifically, right? The
Yeah.
Denver Broncos brought in Russell Wilson. The Las Vegas Raiders brought over Devontae Adams. Um, the Chargers, I want to go through those now. They traded for Khalil Mack. Big addition. He's a veteran guy. I think it's a really great fit for him to be on a team that could be a contender. And during my Chicago Bears episode I had a little while ago, a lot of those guys felt the same way. They were kind of happy for Khalil Mack to be out of Chicago and just have an
Yeah.
opportunity to try to have a shot at a championship sooner in LA rather than with the Bears, at least right now. Um, they obviously were able to sign J.C. Jackson, who was, in my opinion, the top sought after cornerback or defensive back. And then like some like lower level addings or signings, tight end Gerald Everett. So definitely a addition by subtraction kind of a thing, losing Jared Cook and then obviously bringing in Everett. That's a win-win there. Um, then like Kyle Van Noy, obviously he's not quite the same player as he was a couple years ago, but definitely a good bit of depth to add to the linebacker core since they lost Kazir White, who is an outside linebacker player, to the Philadelphia Eagles. So thank you, and I apologize for that.
Oh, you're a lucky
So yeah,
man.
what are your general thoughts on the moves? Do you have a favorite addition, and did you have a player or positional preference from the free agency pool that the Chargers did not address?
So Khalil Mack, thrilled obviously, like any logical person should be. Uh,
Yeah,
there's kind of there seems to be two types of fans with Mac. One is they're expecting that 24-year-old Khalil Mack from Oakland, and he's going to come and tear it up, man. And then there's the other side who thinks Khalil Mack is 57 years old and he's not going to do anything. You can meet in the middle. Very pleased at what you're going to get. I mean, like you guys probably said in the Chicago show, not too much can be expected from him in Chicago, and he still played well. Especially even if you look back, even 3 years ago, he was still elite, I would say. So, I mean, I think 10 sacks is pretty reasonable. Something like 80 tackles. He's not going to be the top dog like he's used to, but he'll be up. And I would much rather have a well-rounded defense like Chicago, pardon me, like Los Angeles was back in San Diego about 5 years ago, than have basically just Derwin James and Joey Bosa and a handful, right? So I was thrilled. I'm expecting that kind of very, very good Mac, but not elite Mac, if you will. Gerald Everett, I'm pretty pleased. Um, I'm not, just overjoyed. I don't love Gerald Everett, but he's serviceable. Much better than what we had in Jared Cook. Uh, I'm pretty excited about a couple of the tight ends we already have. So I'm hoping that Everett comes in and he fills in for a year, maybe two. We got a 6'8" beast, Donald Parham,
Yep.
which unfortunately he's almost just famous for his crazy seizure-like shaking in that one game where he got stretchered off, and that's for the casual people. That's all I know he's good for. But man, that guy is fantastic.
Yeah, I
Especially for
agree.
such a young kid. He's 24, I think.
Sounds
Um,
right.
so for a tight end, he's still growing into his body, if you will. So Gerald Everett, I'd love to see. I'd like to see a good like fantasy high end tight end two numbers from him for a year or two, and then the rest of the guys who got in the cupboard they can take over. In my opinion, again, I don't want to disrespect anybody. I know nothing compared to the pros, but that's kind of where I sit. Uh, Kyle Van Noy is funny because um, when we signed him, I was so thrilled. Um, Obviously, way more thrilled for J.C. Jackson. And a small secret about me is no matter what sport it is, and there's no logical reason, mind you, Steve, no logical reason whatsoever. I hate all Boston teams. Always have,
Okay.
always will. There's something about it. I think it's the fans, let's be honest. Uh, it makes me so mad. And cheering for Pittsburgh all those years, I could have just had a voodoo doll of Tom Brady, man. So it's ironic you get the couple really good Patriots coming over, and I'm so thrilled. And if I look back at 5 years ago, I just slap myself. But the past is the past, man. We're here now.
That's
So Van
right.
Noy, I was
Yeah.
I was so thrilled, especially losing Kazir White. The guy's he was so underrated. Guy's eighth in tackles in the league, playing for like the 29th worst defense in the league. You got a gem. Like you are so lucky. So when he goes into a defense that's so much better, like yours is, like you'll see him. You'll watch him ball out for double digit tackles every game. Like he's fantastic. So
Yeah, that's a
losing
real
him
position of
stung.
need for sure.
Losing him stung, but Van Noy kind of helps out. He's not quite as good, but I'll take him. A couple guys that I'm thrilled about: Sebastian Joseph Day, um,
Okay.
just won a Super Bowl with the Rams. I'm always a big fan of guys who not only are very good at what they do, but they're good humans. Because those are guys you want in your locker room, right? And if you if you're ever bored sometime, just go and watch any YouTube video of him. He's hilarious, and he's very much a community guy. Just got married like a week ago. Just this giant ogre just gushing about his new bride. Like it's so
Oh, that's awesome.
aside from the skill set, man, like I'm so thrilled to have him. We had Austin Johnson. I think he was out of Tennessee. I don't know much about him. I'll be honest with you. But our D line was a little oof last year, and he fits in as a nice tackle, which we had so many holes to fill. So he was a nice one to come in and fill that. And DeAndre Carter was kind of on my radar too. He's a great special teams wide receiver. It seemed like so
Oh,
many,
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
it seemed like so many Chargers fans um, wanted so many wide receivers to come in, wanted 87 wide receivers on the field for Justin Herbert. I was like, I don't want a wide receiver. We have so much we need. So I was glad that we ignored the top flight options and we got what we needed at receiver, which was nice depth and nice on special teams. Like I was thrilled. So, I mean, people criticize Tom Telesco all the time. For years, they've kind of almost picketed his house. But man, you got to give him props. There's nothing short of just handing us the ring. I'm thrilled.
That's great. No, I think attacking special teams as a free agency priority, I think is great. Especially if you can get these guys on the cheap, like
Right.
DeAndre Carter has definitely flashed in his time in Washington. Absolutely. So I love that answer. I think that's really solid. Um, awesome. Now let's review the draft class that they had back in April. Round one, pick 17, guard Zion Johnson, arguably the top guard in the class. Maybe even arguably the top offensive lineman. I don't know if I'd go that far, because like the tackles are more of a priority there. But obviously, tremendous value at 17, as far as I'm concerned, that the Chargers got, and anything you can do to protect Herbert, especially if they already needed that, fantastic. Like that's like an A+ in my book. Round three, they went after a safety, JT Woods. Round four, running back Isaiah Spiller, I thought was very good value for him. Uh, Sort of a team need, right? So it's like Eckler is an absolute stud, but what's behind him isn't anything super special, right? So I think that's a really good fit. Then they basically prioritized the defense of the offensive line in the remaining rounds. Um, do you have a favorite or a least favorite draft pick? Were you happy with the selections or just fine with them? Just your general thoughts would be great.
So this year was kind of funny for me because I go into I watch the combine generally every year.
Okay.
And I watch the draft generally every year. And because those of us in the industry are so fantasy focused, we're always watching. Obviously, because we do our drafts too, right? Like we're in Dynasty. I'm guilty of it virtually every single season, even if my team needs defense or they need just a simple tackle on offense or they need a safety or X fill-in position. I'm always wanting that top flight receiver. I want that stud running back. That, you know what I mean, right? So for this year, for the first time in I'm without exaggeration, probably 15 years, I was like praying, please give us a guard. Please give us a
There we
guard.
go.
And all these mock drafts are giving us oh, there was wide receiver was like the main. You're gonna get a wide receiver. You're gonna get a wide receiver. Everyone's, oh, let's get a wide receiver. I'm like, no, no wide
All I
receiver.
saw was Jamison Williams. All I saw was Chris
Jameson
Olave.
Williams, Chris
Yeah.
Olave, and sometimes I saw Sky Moore. Sometimes you saw who went to Washington.
Dotson.
Yeah, Dotson. I saw Dotson a lot.
Yep.
Anyway, so I'm like, well, you know what? It's ironic. The 1 year I don't want it, I'm going to get it. And we go and we get Zion Johnson. I was like, oh my god. I put out a tweet. I put out a bunch of tweets actually during the draft. I'm pretty active if you ever want to follow NFL Lazenby. I pretty much exclusively just do football. But anyways, I typically combine day, what you're really watching is the QBs and the 40-yard and there's whatever. But the offensive line, it's kind of one of those things that the casual fan is whatever. Who cares about the gargantuan guys? Dude, I was so thrilled watching those guys. And Zion Johnson is out of Boston College. I
Mm-hmm.
watched that kid and I was like, this guy is unbelievable. I put out a tweet. I'm like, this guy is unbelievable. There's two guys. There's two guys I tweeted about. One is him and one is this. His name's Makai Polk. He's a receiver he's UDFA out of for the Ravens. Anyway, just
Oh,
the two of them. That's it. I was like, these guys can play. They looked amazing. And their tape is not like, hey, this is an automatic top 5 draft pick. It's not like you watch the combine and you're like, Jacksonville's going to draft this guy. But I like to watch, the intricacies of it. I like to watch, like, how does the guy look when he's not catching the ball? How does the guy look when he's not on the line for the 40-yard dash? How does he look? Like, is he ready all the time? How does he look when he's communicating? That's what stands out to me, I guess. Maybe
yeah.
that's the coach in me. I don't know. But, man, so I was thrilled with literally everything I saw at the combine. The guy looked powerful. He looked fast. He looked energetic. And they call him a stout guy. He looks like a behemoth to me, but he checked every box. So I'm sitting there when they're at 17, and I'm just like, I'm holding my breath. I just,
Yeah.
oh please. And they picked him, and I could not get enough. And the guy walked up with these big smiles and everything. So I
It's
was
such a
so
great
thrilled.
feeling. Yeah.
And then after he was picked, I'll tell you one story before I move on. But like I talked about, I'm huge on like the character guys. So some fan after the draft gave him this. It was like a giant chain. Like the chains are like that big, giant chain necklace with a Chargers thing, and he
Oh,
wore that.
nice.
So I saw some of the stuff afterwards when he goes to all his interviews and whatever. And the mic people are going after me. He's like, I got to wear this. The fan gave it to me. I was like, that is the guy I want. That's the guy you want to surround your team with. That's a character. So, anyways, aside from the skill level, which is fantastic, just that's probably out of my last 25 years as a fan watching draft picks. That's one of my all-time favorites. Watching a guard. He got drafted as a center, but he's a guard.
Oh,
Watching a
gotcha.
guard get
Gotcha.
drafted because ticks all the boxes. Anyways,
That's awesome.
JT Woods, I was pretty happy, especially for day three. Our depth at safety is pretty much Derwin and Adderley.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Yeah.
nice to have a guy who can step in and fill in. And then other than that, there's a guy we drafted in round 7, Deanne Leonard. I only like him because he's Canadian. I don't know much about him. But whenever a Canadian gets drafted, I'm like, you know what? I'm following this guy. Got to do us proud. Hey, 18th in the CFL draft. Big deal. So we like that guy.
Perfect.
Now, if you talk to other Chargers fans, I don't know, but at least for me, that was pretty fun.
Yeah, no, in the Philadelphia area, there are like Division 1 programs that just aren't great for football always. But like Temple, you'll get some guys out of there,
Yep.
right? So whenever there's like a Temple guy, I'm like, oh, Hassan Reddick, big fan of
Yeah.
him, or like Robbie
Yeah.
Anderson, whoever. Um, so no, I completely understand that. You find your guy from your area, or that's great. That's really cool. That's awesome. Now, were there any undrafted free agents that stood out to you? Well, when I looked over the list, nothing really sparked my eye. But again, I'm not this like deep, college
Right.
scout or anything. But and if the answer's none, that happens sometimes. I'm just curious of your thoughts there.
Yeah, I'm not much of a Debbie guy either. I rarely follow college other than when it actually pertains to they're getting close to the draft.
Yeah.
So I had a few UDFA's on my kind of like watch list. Actually, you nabbed a couple actually. Um, but there's two guys that I really like. One guy's maybe got the best football name ever. His name's Stone Smart. He's
Okay.
a he's a tight end, but he played in college. He played quarterback and tight end, and he's very versatile. So I he's not anyone we're like, oh, I'm going to watch this guy day one. But I kind of see him being kind of not necessarily. He's not going to play quarterback as a Herbert, but being able to fill in those multiple roles, like some other guys have. So I'm pretty excited because the guy can catch, he can block. So he seems to me at least the kind of guy who basically go, Coach, I'll play wherever you want me. Which are those the kind of guys I like to see on my teams, anyways. There's also receiver Trayvon Bradford. He's only 5'9".
Okay.
But aside from his size, the guy checks a lot of boxes. So I'm hoping I can depend on him on special teams. Special teams, again, they weren't in the toilet last year, but certainly not where they should have been. So it's funny. Normally, I'm crazy guilty, like I said earlier, of wanting these skilled players, and I want to have fill in my top line and whatever. And this year it's kind of funny because I'm like, give me somebody who could just be on the kickoff. Give me that guy. Give me a guy who
Yeah.
can take the ball and run it 10 yards for a return. Just do something like that, right? So he's kind of I'm excited. There's another guy. He's another tight end. I'm gonna butcher his name. Eric Cromenhout, his name is. And he's
Okay.
kind of more like he's a long-term project. So if he's still around in 3 years or so, I'll be looking at him. But he's kind of on my back burner, if you will.
Oh yeah, so it's just a total like, oh, if this guy's even remotely interesting, I think that's cool. Like and it's always a surprise, isn't it? Like sometimes players don't get drafted who you're like, I can't believe. But
Yeah,
again, I'm not in the room with the
yeah,
prospects. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know their medicals or whatever. But the one player that like I really thought talent based on talent alone that should have been drafted was Justin Ross. But I know he
yeah,
has a lot of like medical red flags and stuff. He's
yeah,
got a pretty severe like cervical situation. He had a fusion and think it's a pretty heavy duty surgery and stuff.
yeah,
But he did come back to the field last season. Then he hurt his foot, whatever. But he was the kind of player I would have hoped the Eagles or any team, well, the Chiefs did obviously,
yeah,
would take a shot on. And like again, you're hoping for that like dynamic skill position player on the Chargers, right? Like how awesome would that have been if you just have him like in the back in the background, and then if he's able to play, I mean, it'd be awesome, and like Carson Strong was another one that I was
yeah,
really shocked just didn't get drafted. I mean, maybe another like medical red flag situation. But again, you scoop these guys up, and they cost like next to
yeah.
nothing. It's like you got nothing to lose there. So I was very happy that the Eagles were able to scoop him up once again. Not trying to make every show about the Eagles, but here we are.
You gotta,
uh,
hey, you gotta preach the gospel when you're on here, Steve.
that's
Actually,
right.
speaking of UDFA's, I was actually really surprised about Jalen Weidemeyer from Buffalo, the tight end there. I
Yeah.
thought he'd go for sure. So I was pretty annoyed that Buffalo scooped him up because like they need any help at all, right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I think he was the guy whose like stock like seemingly like plummeted after
Yeah,
the
yeah,
combine, right? He just did
more
not test
combine.
very well. But again, I'm not this like uber devy guy. Like it's a name I know just from doing like mocks, and just like kind of seeing like what other people are saying about him. But
People
um, yeah,
people
this
get
is
caught up
interesting.
in those 40 times too much. Like I had a little Twitter battle about a couple guys with rough 40 times,
Yeah,
and ultimately, I mean, you can't have a wide receiver who's running a 5'10", right? But there is wiggle room. Jerry Rice, like he was up in the 4.8s his 40 time, so
wow,
may have been
jeez.
may have been 4.7, 4.78, something like that. But it was ridiculously slow. He was
Yeah, I mean,
terrible,
you get to
and his three
4.6
cones
and
was
higher,
terrible.
and yeah.
So I mean, you can't just ball everything together and say, "Oh, this guy's going to be great." And if you look at the greatest 40 times of all time, um, I mean, Ross out of Cincinnati, still the greatest 40 time of all time, and the guy, I mean, he's in the pros. I'm not, but come on. So I'm all about. It's not just about the combine. It's just more
Yeah,
of a. But I'm like you, right? I'm not in the rooms. What do I? I'm just a schlub sitting here. It just
that's right.
always bothers me.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you there too. I think the prospect like evaluation part of the calendar like in February and March is like just people are at least like where I'm at. It's like the end of the winter. Everyone just
Yeah,
wants the spring. So everyone's a little cranky. So I think people just get a little
yeah,
extra like I don't know when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I agree. I think some of that should not be overlooked, and it should just you look at the collective of it all, right? But if a player just does not test well, I mean, like a GM could be like, well, if it's at this level, he's just off our board or whatever, But again, fantastic opportunity he has in Buffalo,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so very good, I would say, draft, very good free agent signings, and not super detrimental losses. Kazir White, definitely like a hidden gem there. But either way, looking ahead at the 2022 season, we've already gone over your optimism, which is awesome. You're very bullish on your team, which I do love to hear. Um, so so this year you have them projected for playoffs and with expectations of a deep playoff run. Do you think with the level of improvement in the overall division, do you think they can sustain at that level for the next multiple years? Do you think that Justin Herbert and the supporting cast are in a position to be at that level of your expectation this season for like the next like 3 to 4 years, or is it like a smaller window? Do you think?
It's a tough question. As far as long-term sustainability, um, juggernauts are somewhat of a thing of the past because of the salary cap era. I mean, the Tom Brady Patriots are. I don't see those things repeating. So if you can be like the Chiefs recently, just be in the championship so consistently for like 4 years, I think that's what you're looking at. So while Herbert's still in his rookie contract, if we can even get one win, another finals appearance or something like that, to me, that's huge.
Oh yeah,
Because eventually you're going to have to pay, right? So especially some of the contracts that are going out nowadays are unbelievable. Not
yeah,
just a quarterback. Like actually, I remember when quarterbacks, Russell Wilson had the highest paid contract, I think, when he signed years ago back in Seattle. And
yep,
that was for 31 a year, I think, at the time. And Pittsburgh re-signed Big Ben for like 27. And I was like, oh, so much money. And then I'm looking now, I'm like, oh my God, it's nothing now, man. It's
yeah.
nothing. So
I think,
the
yeah,
the
is
Browns,
Rodgers making like 39 or something? Like I forget. Like I think someone's around 40, right?
well, I think that's well, not on the cap at least,
Oh,
but
oh, okay.
Rodgers and Mahomes both made 50 at one point per
Oh
year,
wow. Okay,
not on the
gotcha.
cap. I think on the cap, the highest one, well, aside from Deshaun Watson, which is still up in the air because who knows if he's going to play this year, but aside from that, I'm pretty sure Pat Mahomes is still making 44 on the cap or something stupid like that. So
Gotcha.
regardless, aside from you're gonna have to pay Justin Herbert, we just paid Mike Williams 20 mil a year. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are actually the most expensive receiver doing the league, which is surprising to a lot.
Right.
So it doesn't matter whether you're a receiver or whether you're a quarterback. A lot of these high-end defensive guys are making tons of money. Even running backs nowadays are not cheap like they used to be, even 6, 7 years ago. So I mean, bottom line, a team cannot sustain juggernaut status forever anymore. So I realistically,
Yeah.
like I say, if the Chargers get a ring this year or next year, they're getting it this year, at least according to my prediction.
Perfect.
Um,
Nice.
Realistically, I'd like to at least see one ring and another finals appearance in the next 4 years, and I'd be pretty pleased with that. If magic can happen and you can get more than that, I mean, but I'm a realist that way. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, put all your chips in while quarterbacks are on the rookie contract. That's how you do it nowadays.
Yep.
It's not, it can't be done any other way now, especially after this just Deshaun Watson signing. And Lamar Jackson's is going to be just as bad for the rest of the league. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but for trying to make, you know, there's no more team friendly, if you will. I'll say it.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's really difficult in, well, I guess in any sport, but especially football, where your opportunity as far as like your longevity of a career can be just on average in half of, say, like the NBA, or
Yeah,
in some cases in baseball, guys can be just like a DH through their 40s or
yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
like so it's just really interesting. So it makes sense, but I guess like the way I look at it is as far as like if the Chargers can be contenders the next 5 years, I think Justin Herbert is going to be a perennial top 5, if not higher, quarterback, right? So as long as you have a great quarterback, I think you'll always have you'll usually will be in a position to win. You know what I mean? And obviously, if Staley continues to progress, that's going to be just an insane duo for I think a long time, which I think is very exciting. And again, a lot of the quarterbacks can play for a long time. Like thinking like, well, Carr's getting a little older and Russell Wilson's getting a little, but I mean, Matt Ryan's like
Oh,
what,
but
like
not
38,
really, man.
Yeah,
Not really.
exactly. Yeah, I was second guessing myself there because like Matt Ryan might be like 37, 38 or
Matt
something.
Ryan is 36 or 37, but Derek Carr,
Okay.
he's still only he's 29. I'm pretty confident.
Oh, I thought he
He's
was in
got
his 30s.
there's a lot of these names that you're like, oh man, this guy's been around forever, but they really haven't. Even
Right, right.
Russell Wilson is 30. He's 30 or 31. But now these, if you're a top flight quarterback, um, I mean, you can still be playing really well into your mid 30s.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
as far as the AFC West, I mean, I don't want to come off like a homer, I always say, but uh, unbiasedly, that division is the most exciting division I've seen in a long time. And you
No, I
see
think yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
divisions you're gonna have one really good team, maybe two, and then they're gonna beat up on the little guy for forever and a day. And honestly, that whole division, any team could take it. I don't think they will, but any team could take it. Any team could make the playoffs. Any team could beat any team in the league on any given night. So it's going to be a good year for watching football in the AFC West. It's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are in for a rude wake up call. It's been big brother kicking little brother around for far too long. Little brother just hit a growth spurt.
absolutely. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, no, I think it's really the most exciting like division like in sports in a really long time. Just general sports, aside from football, it's easily the top, as far as the total division is concerned. But yeah, I like every matchup in that division is going to be like must watch TV. I'm like just so excited especially for the Chargers, but for that division
Yeah,
as a whole. I love it. Okay. So, this is a fantasy football show. So we are now going to get a little bit more into the fantasy discussion side of it. Like we said at the top, Chargers have been and were very good fantasy managers during the 2021 season. Justin Herbert finished as the overall quarterback two. Austin Eckler as the overall running back two, with 20 total touchdowns. Insane. Keenan Allen, wide receiver 10. Mike Williams, wide receiver 12. Um, which was awesome to see because um, just tons of potential with that guy. Had some struggles with injuries, and it finally he
yeah,
got it done. Well, I mean he had the 10 touchdown season a couple years ago, but then turned into a pumpkin like the year after. And
yeah,
again, it could just be like an injury thing, but very interesting. First time he had over 100 targets on a season and over 50 receptions.
yeah.
So, um, great player. Love to see his potential realized. But what I want to hear from you is on the Chargers, an offensive player to target at projected cost. Who is your and again, it could be all of them. You could be in on all of them. But is there any one or all of them that stand out to you at cost?
So so for the Chargers for fantasy, I'm in on most of them. Some
Yep.
more so in dynasty, some more so in redraft.
You can go any angle. You can go any
If you're
angle on
not
it.
playing
Yeah.
dynasty, do yourself a favor and try it.
Yes.
If you're
Yeah.
playing in a home league where you get to keep, one, two, even three guys, or even you're like, I'm going to reset every year. What are you doing to yourself? Please play Dynasty. It's such a better deal. But for those of you who are still in the Stone Ages, I have a couple guys who are better for their value in redraft, and a couple guys who are better for their value as Dynasty. Okay,
I
so
love it.
as far as let me find my list here. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. So for Keenan Allen, for me, he's a huge target in redraft. So if you want to look at the number of players in the past, I could be wrong. I'm going to say three for sure. I think 4 years, but 3 years for sure. There's a list of players who have at least 130 targets. Okay, here's the list. Keenan Allen. That's it.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, and he hasn't just played with Herbert. That's with Rivers too. Okay.
Yep.
That's also with Tyrod Taylor. Going to throw that name out of the dirt. He's money every year. So Keenan Allen, there's two things about the guy. Number one, people think he's been in the league for 27 years. The guy's not even 30 yet. So as far as in Dynasty, you got to temper your expectations. But at 29, playing with the best quarterback in the league, I said it. Uh, he's a top 5 wide receiver in redraft, but he's being drafted as though he's a high end receiver 2, low end receiver 1. Most people high end receiver 2. So
Right.
snatch
Right.
that up while you can. Uh, he's money in the bank, especially in PPR. It's not even fair where you get him in the draft.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. I completely agree there. Just a absolute buy at that cost. Set it and forget it kind of player. Yep.
Austin Eckler, when it comes to redraft, his pricing is right around fair. A lot of people have him RB3, RB5, sometimes RB7, right in that clump. Basically, have Jonathan Taylor and you have Derrick Henry when it comes to redraft. Sometimes CMC's in there if you're not afraid of the injury. And then you have this gaggle of running backs that are right close in there. Um, for me, it sounds insane to say it, but the 20 touchdown is not insane to repeat with
Oh,
how
okay.
with how they use him. If you're not playing in PPR, you don't rank him that high. But if it's PPR, like you should be playing, this is a message to my one home league. Uh, I am not shocked if he finishes as RB1. Finishing as
Okay.
RB1 back-to-back seasons is a rarity. So in redraft, he's pretty close. But in Dynasty, people think he's in a wheelchair already. So you can I've out of I don't know the 30 drafts I've done. Some people are going as low as the 6th round for Austin Eckler. So at that price, it's just laughable. Now you're not going to get him for 5 years, mind you, but I mean, win a championship this year and take your money, right? So he's great in Dynasty. Um, Gerald Everett, I would only take in redraft. Like I say, you're going to get him for when it comes to tight ends. When you go grasping for straws and you're like 13th round or something like that. For a tight end too, you can't do too much better than that. Um,
Absolutely.
Jalen Guyton, I love in both formats. Everybody's all
Okay.
about Josh Palmer. Jalen Guyton is already there. Josh Palmer's not there yet. So and Guyton is only 25, so he's only a year older than Palmer. Snatch that up. Um, for Dynasty, Isaiah Spiller is a must-own beyond must-owns. Austin Eckler is 27. He's not going to last forever. Love the guy. He's what turned me on to this team. So I'm not going to badmouth him. Uh, but Spiller's only 20 years old. At one point, some experts had him higher than Brees Hall early in the year, not right before the draft, but early in the year.
Right.
Some people had him as number 1 running back. Now I'm not saying he's Brees Hall; he's not that level. But the point is, you can see the potential there. He's a bigger guy; he can still catch the ball, fits in the scheme perfectly. He'll have more longevity than Eckler. I don't think he's the pass catcher Eckler is, but he could take the hits heavier. And he's going way too late in any format. Redraft, he's going like, I don't even know, 12th, 13th, 14th round sometimes. Now, if you take him in redraft, he's not, that's only for a keeper. If it's redraft and you throw it all away, he's not worth it. But he's worth keeping for real. And Dynasty, it's laughable. I have him in 100% of my leagues. I must have him, and not just because he's a Charger, but the price is just it's too hilarious. I have to go for it. I'm not an expert in IDPs, so take this with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But I'd also target Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson For some reason, people think J.C. Jackson's going to fall off a cliff because now he's not with the Patriots anymore. And people think Khalil Mack already has Alzheimer's. So you snatch up both those guys if you're in an IDP league. Um, and the Chargers defense, that's a great one. If you play with defense, you shouldn't. It's again a message to my one home league. Throw the defenses out. But if you insist
Oh
on
my gosh,
using
I love
them,
it.
if you insist on using them, the Chargers
Yeah.
defense is a great value. A lot of sites have them going like kind of like a 10, 9, 11, 8, around that. To me, they're a top 5. More realistically, 4, maybe 3. They higher if they were in a different division.
No, I
Um,
think they have a lot of sack upside, for
yeah,
sure.
that's
So
exactly it.
obviously,
It's gonna be a lot of games where they're gonna get you 20 points on defense, but then other games when they get in a shootout, they're gonna get you 2, 3 points. So you got to be
right,
worried about that. But the price is right, right?
like DFS or
That,
something.
and above all, my number one buy is Justin Herbert. I don't care what, if it is dynasty, if it's redraft, if it's keeper, if it's best ball. I don't care what it is. Mark my words, write it in the calendar. He is quarterback 1 in any format. I don't care what the format is. I don't care how much you have to run the ball. I don't care what you get for a rushing touchdown. QB1, and that is unbiasedly. It sounds biased, but it's not. I said the same thing about another guy not on Pittsburgh a couple of years ago when I used to cheer for Pittsburgh. He's my number one must buy. I will trade almost any. You're in some leagues with me, Steve. I'll trade almost anything for him.
That's right. Okay.
Especially a super flex. Give the ball, give the key, throw it away.
Yeah, a lot of the Scott Fish Bowl draft started today, and in my division, Herbert went 101.
Yeah.
A lot of people just have like Josh Allen as chalk, but I really can't argue against it. So I'm with you there. Yeah, I love
Again,
it.
I wrote another article. I started this series called Dynasty Deathmatch on
Oh, gotcha.
on our website, dynastyprosfootball.com. If you want to know. You're basically putting one guy against one guy head to head. You can only have one. You're going to pick this guy because of this. You pick this guy because of this. So
Right.
I wrote an article basically Josh Allen versus Justin Herbert. Who do you take? And unbiasedly, here's the statistics. Here's why, et cetera, et cetera. And I picked Justin Herbert for X amount of reasons. Go read it. It's a fun read, stats driven, if you will. But
Perfect.
if you give it another, after this year, if people are still saying Josh Allen is QB1, I'll be very surprised, to be honest.
Gotcha. I like it. Any Chargers to fade? I sort of presented those numbers with Mike Williams because he would be my only Charger to fade at cost, right? So he's going a lot of time for like redraft purposes in a range that's similar to Keenan Allen. I think that's
Yeah.
a mistake. I would feel much more safer. Uh, much more safer. Is that English? I don't know. I'd feel
No, I
safer
got you.
okay, with Keenan Allen compared to Mike Williams, just because of the very spotty um, ups and downs of his career. And again, love to see that potential realized. But like I said, this was the first time he ever had over 100 targets. First time ever having over 50 receptions. So you are really just drafting him at his ceiling at that point, which I think
Yeah.
does exist with Herbert with the offense. However, uh, at around that cost, there's just is a bunch of guys I would rather have that I think are not as risky.
Yeah.
Even though I'm very happy for the season he had, that would be like my one fade. But again, at the right price, I would absolutely be in on him. But like where he's going in drafts at this point, I have no interest. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
he would be more of a like a mid-season trade target. I'm just talking about purely from a drafting standpoint. He's not necessarily a foundational piece that I would want to invest in like the first 5 rounds necessarily. And that's where
Mhm.
he's going. So for me, I'm just kind of out there. Doesn't mean I don't want him. Just as I'm building a team,
Yeah.
he's not. I'll just let someone else take him. Just because like I think wide receivers deep enough. Whatever. So that would be the only one that I would be hesitant to get. How about you?
Mike Williams is he's eerily similar to Keenan Allen to me. Keenan Allen early on had so many injury issues, and then I avoided him forever,
Yeah,
because I was like, I'm just going to get injured again. He's just going to get injured. I can't take the risk. Look at how expensive he is. I can't do it. And I missed out so many years. Um,
right.
that being said, I definitely see Keenan Allen as way safer. The only format Mike Williams is more valuable or even on the same level as Keenan Allen is like a best ball redraft, non PPR. So you're basically counting on this guy is going to score you touchdowns and get yards. That's it. He can't be depended on for those double digit targets a game. That's not how they use him. So for me, I always tell people he's kind of like a guy who you love to have in real life, but in fantasy, he's quite infuriating.
Yeah,
Uh, MVS with Green Bay, now with Kansas City, except way better version of
for sure.
constant red zone threat, constant deep ball threat. The guy, he's only 6'4", but he seems like he's 7'2". But he's not that guy you put in your lineup and you're like, okay, I'm set, good to go. He's more like a guy you put in your lineup. You're like, please have a good game today. Please have a
Yeah,
good game. So
yeah. He
I'm
kind of.
exactly with you.
Yeah,
At a certain value, man, I can't take him where he's at. Last year, I took him almost everywhere, man. Not this year. I just can't do it. I'm only Josh Palmer's another name. Sorry, that I'm like. Now this one's almost nothing because a lot of people don't even care about Josh Palmer. But for those
yeah. The
who
cost
are
benefit is very different there. Yeah,
in Dynasty for Josh Palmer, for example, he's far too expensive. They got a lot of truthers out there for Josh Palmer. He's like the next guy. He needs more time to cook. He's not ready yet. And for IDPs, I'm not an expert. Take that. But if I was doing IDPs, Derwin James is far too expensive. Um, I mean, unbiasedly, again, in my mind, he's the top safety in the league. For anyone else, if he's not the top safety, he's in the top three. Um, but he's a guy, again, he's more of a real life. I could not ask for more. But in fantasy, I think he's not going to be quite as effective as he was in the past because you brought in so much more support. So he won't have to make so many tackles, so many interceptions, be on the field so much, basically carrying the team on his back because now he has other guys to lean on and depend on. Joey Bosa is kind of the same situation. I don't think the regression so much with him, but similar situation on our defense. Like those two had to carry the team for so long.
yeah.
So again, not an expert in IDPs. We got other guys on our site who are far better than I am at that. But if I had to pick one, that's.
No, I think that's a really good distinction. Definitely a guy you love to have on the actual team, but on the fantasy side, kind of want to limit the expectations there. So I think that's a really interesting um distinction and point to make. So I love that. I'm really thrilled you brought in IDPs. So that's even better. Um, okay, awesome. Well, Tim, I think we nailed it. I think we have a very good idea of the level of hype that everyone should have for the Chargers, but also realistic expectations from the fantasy side. So at this point, we're just gonna wrap up. Just reintroduce your handle, where people can find your content, and then just tease anything you've done recently or have coming out.
So, like we said before, Tim Lazenby. You can find me on Twitter at NFL NF No, oh my God. At my family. Sorry, I have to tell you a side. I got to tell you a side story. My family always teases me because my last name is Lazenby. So they say you should call yourself NF Lazenby. NFL Lazenby. Just call me that. NFL Lazenby. So
Perfect.
at
Perfect.
NFL Lazenby. They got in my head. Sorry. And I write for dynastyprosfootball.com, as does Steve.
That's right.
And on Twitter, I'm pretty active guy. I'm almost exclusively football. You're not going to find pictures of food and my cats and me tweeting about what's your favorite month or whatever. I'm pretty much exclusively football.
Oh, I love it.
I think out of my thousands of tweets, I'm pretty confident I have tweeted 3 tweets not about football. So if you're a
There you
football
go.
person, it's all I do. Um, in the works in the future, not this second or tomorrow, but I will eventually be starting a YouTube channel also, but that's a ways away still. But you can find me right now, dynastyprosfootball.com and Twitter at NFL.
I love it. So if you like football, if you like interacting with really nice people like Tim, please shoot him a follow. I know from experience just how nice and just how smart he is from, again, being in the same writing world at the same website and being a opponent of yours in that dynasty league. That Tim is definitely a sharp guy and just one of the sweetest guys in the fantasy football community, as far as I'm concerned. So,
Appreciate
Tim,
it.
thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your passion about the Chargers. I wish your Chargers well, if not the Eagles. I am very happy with the Chargers succeeding. Yeah, so I think everyone should check out that article that you wrote breaking down all the wins and losses. That sounds like an incredible read. But Tim, once again, thank you for coming on. I wish you well in your leagues this year. I wish your Chargers well. And just again, I just want to thank you for coming on and being who you are. So, yeah,
Appreciate it. You too, Steve. Nice guy as well, man. Always a pleasure.
absolutely. Alrighty, that's going to be it for the show today. But do follow Tim on Twitter at NFL Lazenby. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Again, follow Tim, follow myself, Steve at Fantasy Ladder, and be sure to subscribe to the IDP Guys YouTube channel. Alrighty, take it easy.